Our understanding of human development, our understanding of human processes, our understanding of the mind, our understanding of thinking or learning should begin here. If we really want to understand human development, human thinking, human learning, human processes, we have to understand our program. And there are two kinds of program: the natural program and the nurturing program. The natural program is fundamentally about the genetic factor that is at play in our human development. And whether we like it or not, for example, the thinking aspect. Thinking is part of human structure, human processes. Whether we like it or not, we're going to think because it is part of us. It is part of our whole human structure. The second kind of programming is the nurturing program. The nurturing program is basically about human being creating the programs in our life. We build our concept, we build our perceptions, and these perceptions and these concepts of our life created by us human beings are the ones creating programs in our lives, our behavior, our relationship, how we are using the environment, how we are using the resources, how we are dealing with people, how we are creating choices, and the rest of many things happening in our lives as a human being, whether as an individual, as a family, as a group, or even as a community. Now, is there a relationship between the two? Definitely there is a relationship. Whatever we have, whatever program we have, naturally responds to how we nurture our lives. And how we nurture our lives with the different programs that we create in our mind, the perceptions that we build up, is also in one way or another affecting our natural development. The big challenge now in considering the program, in understanding the program, is being able to connect, being able to connect to the whole aspect, to the whole element, to the whole structure, to the whole processes. And by doing so, then we're going to have an opportunity to take control of the whole programs that we have, to be able to understand the path by which we can actually maximize whatever nature this human development has, whatever we have done to nurture this human development. In short, we have to connect and take control of the processes of the brain, of the sensory, and our memory. If we are really serious about really understanding human development, thinking processes or learning processes, or personality development processes, we have to understand how our brain works for us. We have to understand how our sensory works for us, and we have to understand how our memory works for us. And we're talking about sensory. Sensory is not only about seeing, hearing, touching, tasting. It is all about our whole body. Our whole body is part of the sensory processes. And you have to take note that our sensory is not separated with our brain. Take away our brain and our senses will not function. Take away the sensory and what is the place of the brain. On the other hand, also it is also important to understand how our memory works. Our sensory and our brain are the depository of our memories. Although memory is again a natural process and a natural phenomenon of our life as a human being, we store our memory in our sensory, in our brain. Now the fundamental question again is, are we connected? Are we in control of the brain, the sensory, and the memory? And the challenge is to really be in connection, being in control of our brain, of our sensory, and our memory. Now, if we really want to connect with and control our human development, connect and control the learning processes, connect and control the thinking processes, then we have to understand that there are three fundamental paths in connecting and controlling, and this is stimulating, the processing, and programming. Stimulation is fundamentally about activating our brain, sensory, and memory. Processing is fundamentally about how our brain and sensory and memory process information, processes data, processes experiences, processes beliefs, or processes whatever is happening in the stimulation. And the third part is the programming. Programming is the entity, is the element that becomes permanent to us. It becomes now a habit. It becomes now an irremovable aspect of our lives. And these, whatever happening in the program, were generated by the stimulation and the processing. And later on, whatever we have in the program right now becomes an object for stimulation or an object for the processing. Again, these are not separated elements. They are all interconnected. And they are, again, very much occurring in our brain and sensory and memory. We have to take note that the interconnection of all these elements, the connecting, the controlling, the stimulation, the processing and programming, the brain, the sensory and memory, and sensory are happening internally, is an internal aspect. It happens in our brain, in our sensory and memory. It's fundamentally internal. It happens within us. On the other hand, also, all these interconnected elements are also happening external. It happens in the environment. It happens outside of us. Our brain would not have any imagination of what a tree is, what an apple is, without an externalization, without an external experience. So again, the connecting, controlling, stimulation, processing, programming in the brain's sensory and memory function internally and function externally. Now the question is, what is the outcome of knowing the whole dynamics of all these elements? What will be the output of knowing the dynamic structure and system with all these elements? Simple. By knowing all of this, by knowing all this structure, by knowing all the system, by knowing the whole dynamics of our human development, learning and thinking, then we become more aware of our capacity, potential, and limitation. The capacity of our brain, sensory, and memory, the potential of our brain, sensory, and memory, and the limitation of our brain, sensory, and memory. Capacity is about the strength. What is the strength of my brain, sensory, and memory? What is the potential? Potential is something that is about to happen, that is not yet there, but it has its possible strength that I still have to explore. What is the possible strength of my brain, sensory, and memory? That which I have to explore. And what is the limit? Up to what extent can I use the strength of the brain, sensory, and memory? And the problem is that very often we push ourselves beyond our limit. We push people beyond the limit of the brain, sensory, and memory. And we have to remember, we have to put this in our head, that each of us has its own capacity, potential, and limitation. If we really want to maximize the gift of each people in terms of a specific goal, then we have to understand their capacities, their potentials, and their limitations. What do we need to do now to fully maximize this awareness? Maximize the awareness of the interconnection of the different elements here. And I would like to introduce a framework, a perception, a concept that will put these all elements together. And I call this wellness intelligence. Wellness intelligence is a human process by which we nurture the nature of life by being able to connect and control the sensory, memory, and brain to stimulation, processing, and programming. Take note that the elements, the dimensions of wellness intelligence are interconnected and interdependent. The moment you talk about this physical, for example, the physical wellness intelligence, they are all connected. For you to build up your wellness intelligence, you have to consider this one, right? And the emotional intelligence are dependent to other elements also. So if we want to build our wellness intelligence, we have to consider the 7 elements, and building one is about building the rest of the elements. Our current programming is not perfect. Our present programming has its own limitation, has its own gaps. So given that, we might open ourselves to reprogramming, creating a new program of our lives, opening up ourselves to the possibility of growing in a more positive and a progressive way. Yes, for instance, we might be able to discover that we need to reprogram the way I view my physical life, how I look at my body, how I handle my emotions, how I relate with other people, how I manage information, how I manage experiences, how I organize my life, how I deal with the environment, how I participate with the ecological nurturing of the environment, how I look into my spiritual life, or how I communicate, how is my communicating skill. So given that the whole aspect of wellness intelligence goes to the direction of creating awareness of programming, and at the same time doing the reprogramming. In as far as my practice of wellness intelligence, looking at in the entire dynamics of the brain, sensory, and memory, stimulation, processing, and programming, capacity, potential, and limitation, the wellness intelligence can be used to strengthen the teaching and learning processes, strengthening relationship, whether it is family or couple relationship, marital life. And related to that, wellness intelligence can be used in parenting. And on the other hand, also, wellness intelligence can also be used in personal development, child development, and even in organizational development. Now, do you want to maximize your strength and use your optimal potential? Then, journey with me in building up and in shaping your wellness intelligence.